Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and a happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there. Listen, for me, it doesn't to be a better time of year. This is the middle of the summer, beach weather. Olympics are coming up. Beach volleyball. For someone with a volleyball background, beach volleyball is in its full swing, and to top it off, football is back, kind of. Anyway, but we'll take it. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts of your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is my partner in crime, and maybe a little less enthusiastic about the weather, but nonetheless a very good friend, Brendan Boylan. How are you tonight, Brendan?
Oh, good. Unenthusiastic about the weather. It's hot. I almost melted over the weekend, but I was at the beach for a day essentially, and I almost melted. It was hot. So hopefully it's a little bit cooler for you, because I thought I was going to die.
Listen, you know me. You've known me for a while, and the hotter the better for me. I'd be willing to melt at the beach, and like we were talking about before we went live on the air, my worst day at the beach is my best day anywhere else. So that's I would take your issues for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it was a good time of year. Summertime, Saints football is officially commenced, I guess, now that training camp has begun. I think that's kind of the official date of the start of 2024-25. So we got some stuff to get to. The guys aren't in full pads, but it's good to start getting back to normalcy of covering a football team and a football season. So DJ, decided to throw in a comment early here on the live. So we'll go ahead and I guess he read our minds, because we're just going to jump right into it. He says, "What's up with Alvin Kamara?" So that's the big storyline coming into, I wouldn't say just camp, just this offseason in general.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob, do you want to give us kind of a timeline on how we got here? It's not a super long timeline, but if you want to give us a little brief on how we've got to where we are and where we currently stand with Kamara showing up for mandatory training camp today.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you said, it's not a very long timeline here. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know that Alvin Kamara left the team's last mini camp practice back in early mid-June-ish because of we'll call it a contract dispute, although things are far from ugly here. And basically, as again most of since then Kamara has been seeking a redone contract from the New Orleans Saints, one with a little bit more years added onto it, and certainly more guaranteed money, because Kamara, beyond, he's under contract for this year and next year, but beyond this year, there is zero guaranteed money coming to him. So there's not a lot of job security there if you're looking from Alvin's perspective. And you and I have talked about this a lot. Alan Ulrich, has joined us and talked about this a lot. We all expected a new deal for Kamara to be done either shortly before or shortly into training camp. Well, neither of those things happened, but Alvin Kamara did report for training camp. Made kind of a cryptic Instagram post, borrowing, included with a picture with Marshawn Lynch, and using one of Lynch's old phrases. I'm here, from Kamara. I'm here so I won't get fined. Basically, what Kamara was alluding to is every day that a player misses training camp, it is a mandatory $50,000 fine. That cannot be rescinded by the team or altered by the team. It's in the collective bargaining agreement. So, true to Kamara's word, he didn't want to lose the money. And Alvin's always been pretty frugal that way. That we know of, there are no no advancement in the talks between Kamara's representatives and the New Orleans Saints for a new deal. But I'm still not worried about that because the Saints have never made contract negotiations public in any way, shape, or form, regardless of the stature of the player. I still believe that this is a deal that will get done. And sure enough, Alvin showed up today in pads, well, shorts and shells, and went through workouts, and then even had a brief conversation with the media, after practice. So, really, as far as Alvin Kamara on the field, it's all systems go. There is no indication that he's going to be any kind of distraction. I would have been shocked if he were. He showed up on the first day of practice and is ready to go to work. So, as far as Alvin Kamara, the football player, you can't ask for anything more than that.
I'll touch on this when it comes to what you just said with Alvin addressing the media a little bit today. He's said it before. We have said it many times on this show. You have written it many times. Kamara wants to retire a Saint. And he said it again. And I think that's what should be most telling through this process and most telling when a deal gets done, not if a deal gets done, when a deal gets done, is Kamara is, yes, concerned about not this year, but the following year of his contract being non-guaranteed. He wants to get paid. Understandable. But he also wants a contract extension that is going to put enough years in to where he can legitimately consider retirement with the New Orleans Saints. Now, you might be sitting here and going, well, Brendan, even like a 3-year contract or a 4-year contract extension, only puts him in his, early to mid 30s. It's like, well, honestly, if you get to 30, 31 as a running back, you did pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I think that's what, I don't even want to call it a holdup. That's what the negotiation is. Can Alvin get paid, and can he get a contract that is long enough to get him to a state where he could consider retirement? Remember, this is also a guy that has already jumped into future endeavors for post-football. And one of the biggest ones is continuing to be a vital piece of, I don't want to say fan engagement. I don't believe that was the title that he got, but his role with NASCAR and being an ambassador to the sport and helping spread the sport to communities that are not typically fans of or are not exposed to the same levels as people maybe in my backyard where NASCAR lives and dies, and I have very literal shops 3 minutes from me, right? Here in this area, everybody knows what it is, but he's gone and found those endeavors, which I don't think says anything about, retirement's on the mind. But I think Alvin also knows as a running back, which we've mentioned, countless times over the years, like the shelf life of running backs is just not, and it never has been. It's not like this is a new thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, guys have retired early at the running back position. Obviously, Barry Sanders, maybe the biggest one of all, we retired too early, but you can talk about shelf lives. We're not just talking about careers. Like, there are guys that extended their careers as running backs, but we're talking about prime years where you were the true number one guy. And I don't know how deep you want to go into this, Bob, but if I look at it right now, I go, you know what? Kamara's what, 28, 29?
I think 29, yeah. I'm
not crazy to say that this year plus 2 more, 3 years is probably what Kamara's, the peak of his powers are these next, 3 years, and then it's going to be over. And especially in New Orleans, who has a history of, backfields by committee, like, I'm sure Kamara will find a spot if he wants to continue his career. Or if he does go somewhere else, I'm sure he will find a role a specialty role wherever he wants for a contending team. But that's what it is right now, is can we get enough years to where he plays the rest of his prime and hopefully the rest of his career in New Orleans without, one, breaking the budget, and two, I mean, negotiations, communication is a two-way street.
Yeah.
And you may have Kamara in his camp saying one thing and New Orleans' camp going, I don't know about that. And that's kind of where we are. I wouldn't read too much into the quote-unquote cryptic social media posts. Kamara's always been known to, post some things and probably get more of a giggle out of it than anything because he knows he's messing with people's heads. But look, I mean, the nod to Marshawn Lynch is funny.
Yeah.
It is.
I got a laugh out of it.
And I wouldn't read more into it than that. And I think we alluded to this like 2 weeks ago. If there was ever a Saints player where like the cryptic tweet or the cryptic post actually meant something, it was Michael Thomas, which I loved that as much as anything else because he was very savvy about it. But when it comes to Alvin and some of these posts, it's like, yeah, he's only at camp because he doesn't want to get fined, because he doesn't want to lose money, and he understands that $50,000. I mean, that's a lot of money to anybody, not just multimillionaires and not just people like you and me. Like $50,000 is a lot of money, and shoot, I don't care. And Bob, you'd probably be the same way. If we were multimillionaires and our mothers found out that we just handed over $50,000 for not showing up to work one day, yeah, like we'd be done. Like our mothers would have our heads on a silver platter.
Yes, sir. Even if I was a millionaire, my dad would lynch me. It's as simple as that. And like you said, $50,000, even to a wealthy person, like many football players, if you miss a week of training camp, that's 1 week exactly. That's $350,000. Listen, that's a hell of a lot of money. And, if there's one thing that we know about Alvin Kamara, it's that he's always been practical. He has always been careful with his money. And this is not a person who's whining and crying that he can't put food on the table now. Nothing silly like that. It's Alvin being smart, and having the forthright to look ahead at life after football. Not just your first 3 or 4 years, but 10, 15, 20 years after he decides to hang up the cleats. We believe anyway, from everything that we know about Alvin, is that he does, like to save his money. He doesn't have overly extravagant spending habits that we're aware of. He likes his occasional, shall we call them adult club trips. Likes his occasional trips to Vegas. But I mean, other than that, like you said, Brendan, we know Kamara has been involved in a few business ventures outside of the sport of football. When a player does that kind of thing, especially at the relatively young age that Alvin is, that just shows you that this is a person with the forthright to look down the road, not just for today, tomorrow, and next week, but years down the road. And he's just trying to set himself up. I don't think it doesn't feel like he's asking for anything extravagant. He's not being a malcontent, like certain players that were number 13 previously for the New Orleans Saints were. And again, the fact that he came to work on the day that he was supposed to, and as always, he seems to be in phenomenal shape, I think is a great sign. And as you know too, and as a lot of you fans know, the Saints will take care of their players. They are traditional loyalists to their players. And usually when a player is in the final year of a deal or wants a new deal, we've seen it with Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy, Ryan Ramczyk, Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore, in the latter stages of Drew Brees' career. This kind of thing is going to get taken care of in training camp, or at worst, shortly into the regular season. And again, it's not going to be a distraction.
I mean, in all honesty, when's the last time we've seen like a true holdout from a New Orleans Saints player?
Right.
You could say Jimmy Graham. after Jimmy Graham, it's been a while. Did Mike McKenzie hold out?
Yeah, Mike McKenzie held out. Obviously, that was before Jimmy. If you recall, Michael Thomas held out yeah, all of, I think, like 4 days back in 2019, I want to say. But even then, we all knew because we were already reporting on it. Yeah, the deal for Thomas is done in principle. They're just waiting for the ink to dry on the paper, and for some finite details to be worked out. And Thomas was there at training camp. He just wasn't out onto the field. Those are the kind of holdouts. I think the most notorious recent example of contract issue was Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and even then, Gardner-Johnson didn't hold out. You wish he would have, because he acted like a petulant child on the field and got himself dealt out of New Orleans. But that's the last major contract issue that I can think of.
Yeah, but to your point, like that wasn't even a holdout. Like no. I very literally, I remember I wrote an article at the time because he had missed practice, and I had reported on the fact that he did not miss practice for holdout reasons. He had missed practice because of a family issue or a family emergency or something, and he got dealt like 2 days after that. And it was that quick. For Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Yeah, Mike Thomas 4 days, but yeah, I think Jimmy's probably the last one. And even then they took care of Jimmy.
Yeah.
After that whole, wanting to be paid as a receiver on the franchise tag thing, like they still took care of Jimmy. They took care of Mike McKenzie. They took care of all these guys. It just is what it is. And don't get it twisted. This isn't a situation where we're going to wake up one day and like Kamara's not at camp.
Right.
Like there's not going to be a situation where it gets really bad and Kamara is like, I'm just not going to show up to work. Like he's going to be there. If he didn't show up today, that's a different story. But showing up on the very first day and being a part of it, I'm not too worried about it. And at the very worst, and we're just talking hypotheticals at this point because he did show up today. At the very worst, he probably does something similar to what Mike Thomas did. Is he's in the building, he's there, he's just not participating. Kind of similar to what Jordan Love's doing right now in Green Bay, where he's there, he's in the building, he's just not participating as he's trying to negotiate a new contract as well. Crazy what one playoff run can do for you, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
For Jordan Love.
Whatever. Good luck, Green Bay.
I was high on Love in the draft process. You were. So I still cannot fathom going, oh, yeah, you played really well for a stretch of like 8 games. I'm going to pay you a crap ton of money. Hey, it happened to a fan favorite in Teddy Bridgewater as well. Carolina paid him a ton of money for that 5-game stretch, but we knew that was going to happen. I think we knew that was going to happen with Jordan Love as well. Yep. But it still baffles me. Your sample size is so small, and you're still willing to – you're not even taking a gamble at that point. You don't want to say mortgaging your future. Like, that's a little dramatic.
Is it?
But you are investing a lot of money into a guy like – for Teddy, he played 1 year in Carolina. 1. And for Jordan Love, like I hope it's successful, but he has big shoes to fill. And you've been notorious to talk about it. You don't want to be the replacement to the legend. You want to be the replacement to the replacement a lot of the times. And it's very rare that lightning strikes twice or you strike gold twice. And they did with Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers right after. I have a hard time believing it's going to happen 3 times.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock on Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love's a good quarterback. I think he'll be a good quarterback in the league for a long time, but I don't know about this. Let's pay him elite money. But that's a different, this is a Saints podcast.
Right.
We can get into like NFL guys getting paid way too much money. It happens in every sport though. It happens in every sport. Before we transition to the next Saints training camp topic, while we're still off topic because we can do what we want, it's our show. 2 quick things. The first is, TV and media has really changed how CBAs work, how money is distributed. Did you see any of the news today with TNT and Amazon Prime and the NBA?
No, I did not.
TNT matched the offer for Prime, and the NBA still rejected TNT's offer. TNT came out with a statement saying essentially they were wrong, like they were done wrong, and that they will be, I don't want to say seeking legal action. I don't remember exactly what the statement said, but it was something along the lines of that. And I was like, wow, TV money is really changing things. And the second one on a little bit more of a serious note, and I just want to get this in because I know, especially when we sign off, we're just trying to get off. Bob and I are tired. It's late. You guys are late, tired, and it's late wherever you guys are as well. But I did want to, on a more serious note, just send my condolences to the family of Big Pat, who was the public address announcer for the Charlotte Hornets / Bobcats for 21 years. He passed away unexpectedly at 55 today. I had some interactions with Pat over the years. Gave me some good advice in the industry as well. He had an incredible story on how he actually became the PA announcer for the team. He was not one of the 500 finalists, and 500 finalists. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. Wow.
But he called and begged his way. They said, hey, you can come down from Maryland, but you need to be here tomorrow. And we're not paying your way. We're not paying for your hotel. We're not paying for your food. See you in the morning. And he used his last bit of money to come down and audition. He ended up getting the job for 20 plus years. So condolences to the few people here in the Charlotte area and his family that may be tuning in. Big loss today for the entire city of Charlotte. He was the voice of Spectrum Center and Time Warner Cable Arena for a long time. But back to the New Orleans Saints. So we've got Kamara out of the way. There was another running back that made some news today, which is ironic, Bob, because we just spent a whole podcast last week talking about running backs, isn't it?
I know. It was one of the positions that we had the least worry about.
And here we are. 20-something minutes into this episode, and we're just getting to running back. Getting into this. So, yeah. Anyway. Let's talk about Kendre Miller, a guy that you and I have a lot of high hopes for. If you guys don't believe us, go back and listen to last week's podcast on your favorite platform for finding podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, what have you. We're all over the place now. So, shameless plug. Go listen to the podcast back if you want some of our details and some of our conversations regarding the running back position. But Kendre Miller, very similar to last season, Bob, left with an injury, what was an apparent hamstring injury during individuals earlier today. Didn't get to the team portion. And Dennis Allen, who, and Bob, let me know if I'm misquoting you. And I'm chuckling a little bit because this is where that Facebook post that you made about gaslighting you every week kind of comes into play, because I've never done that before.
No, not at all.
Not once. But if I'm misquoting you, I'm sorry, but I believe you've called Dennis Allen spineless in the past. I'll just keep it at spineless. We can go. I can't get this to be a PG-13 show today. But you've called him a spineless in the past. And today, for a very rare showing of Dennis Allen, really chewed a player out in Kendre Miller in a way. Passive aggressive might be a good way to describe it. It wasn't very passive. It was more passive aggressive. Can we do aggressively passive? Is that a thing? Did we create a new word? I don't know.
It is a thing, but I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would put the word passive.
It was just aggressive.
In this at all. Today. Dennis Allen channeled his inner Sean Payton and basically said that Kendre Miller is a guy that needs to find a way to stay on the field. You cannot make the team from the training room. And that last sentence was the exact quote. That is very, very uncharacteristic for Dennis Allen. He usually keeps things very politically correct. doesn't speak in depth on these matters at all. And when he does, usually strays on the positive, but not here. And first of all, to address the fans that are already lining up on the Crescent City connection, or wanting to pack Kendre Miller's bags out of town. It's one injury, folks, and we don't even know how serious this hamstring injury is. However, I get it. Because Kendre Miller missed a big chunk of training camp in the preseason last year because of knee and then hamstring issues. He had knee and hamstring issues well into the season, and only played 8 games, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, you can't. It's hard to disagree with Dennis Allen here. And you could say he was calling out the player. I hope Kendre Miller takes it that way, because Dennis is right. Is Kendre Miller in danger of not making the team? Probably not. But when you have, as we've pointed out many times, Brendan, you have a new offensive coordinator, hence a new system coming along with it. You need to be all hands on deck. Alvin Kamara is there. And everybody is very aware that Alvin Kamara is not entirely happy with his contractual status. Chris Olave was there, and Chris has been dealing with back issues. He spent all of a half day on the PUP list before passing his physical and getting onto the field for the first day of practice. Kendre Miller, I agree with Dennis Allen here. Kendre Miller, who you and I, Brendan, believe could have a big role in this offense. He needs to get out there and stay out there. So I do get the frustration both from the fans and Dennis Allen here.
It was funny, and you said he channeled his inner Sean Payton. I feel like I've heard Sean say that verbatim about players. You cannot make the team from the training room. In all honesty, if one of you wants to be our research team, I know Sean has said that at some point to someone or about someone.
My guess is more than once.
Multiple times, right? I guarantee it. Sean had said that publicly and privately. I don't want to rehash what we did last week, but you and I both have really high hopes for Kendre Miller. Unfortunate. Muscle injuries, as you know, Bob, being a former professional athlete yourself, those are the ones that you have to be extra careful about, because a strain can become a tear really easily. It doesn't take much. And some hamstring strains are just pulling your hamstring. Like, recovery time is different for everybody as well.
Yeah.
So kind of what you alluded to, we don't know the severity. He could be out a couple days. He could be out a couple weeks. We don't know. But I do like to see this different side of Dennis Allen. I'm going to be a little bit more reserved to make any judgments that this is a change that we see. I don't want to say permanently, but more often, right? I don't like Dennis is not a fiery. That's not his type of coaching style, right? He's not that fiery, passionate type of guy that's, making remarks like that or getting into people's faces. But I do like to see the fact that, hey, look, this is what it is. And to make that statement day one, I think is telling as well. I don't know if that's telling because the Saints really believe that they have a lot of talent in the room and anybody's replaceable. I don't know if it's, hey, it's day one and let me make a statement to the team. I don't know if this is DA knows that, he's on the hot seat and he's got to do things like that. It could be a mix of a lot of things.
I was wondering if you were going to go there because that's where I'm kind of leaning now.
It's kind of a blender to me. I think there's a little bit of ingredients of all the things I mentioned. I think it's just a little bit of a mix of everything, but I like it. I hate it for Kendre. I want to see him play. I think he's a really talented back. When I say talent, I'm not talking like this guy's going to be the next all-pro running back for the New Orleans Saints, but I think he's got a lot of talent, and I think he could be a very good contributor to this team and this offense. But But DA's right. You got to see him on the field, because when we did see him on the field last year, he played, especially that last game against Atlanta, he played really well. And he had moments, and you don't want to give up on those things. But to your point, DA said we can't make the team from the training room. I really don't think Kendrick Miller's got a whole lot to worry about. Even if he misses all of training camp, for the Saints to cut like a guy that was a third-round pick, like I don't see it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't see it. I've also mentioned how much I hate this culture of, hey, if you don't produce in the first 6 months that we draft you, you're getting cut. Like that's ridiculous. Like, you remember the days, I don't even know if I can talk, because I think free agency became a thing before I was even born, but there was a time there wasn't free agency. Like, you just got stuck with whoever you drafted. You had to hope it worked out. Like, where is that? But I digress. Hopefully it's not a serious injury. I'm happy to see DA kind of make a statement a little bit. It's different. Let's get to some of the questions in the comments. Jonathan, I don't know if I want to go that route today. We'll save. You and I specifically talked about this, Bob.
I know, but
okay. Will Carr lose his job?
No. Next question.
Simple answer: no. Did he have a bad day today? No. Was it overhyped that he threw an interception on one of the first drives? Yes. Carr will not lose his job unless Carr suffers a season-ending injury. Fair? Fair. Great.
Fair.
All right. Anna asks, thoughts on 18 games? So this is my problem with the NFL. One of my many problems with the NFL. One of my many problems with the dudes in suits that don't step out on the field, the guys in suits that don't do any research and just leave it up to different committees and teams. You cannot be about player safety and also ask these guys to play more games. That doesn't make any sense, right? Like, they're talking about you can wear the padded, I don't know what you call it, but the padded things that go over your helmets in games now to encourage player safety. Okay, great. Then why the hell are we asking these guys to play 18 games a season? Bob, we've had enough guys on this show. We have guys that we can pick up the phone and call, guys we can pick up the phone and text and say, hey, man, you've been retired for however many years, or hey, you haven't played in the NFL. You've maybe played in other leagues, but you haven't played in the NFL since this time. So how's your body holding up? You know, we had a great conversation. It's been a few years now. You need to get him back on the show. But Kyle Turley, we had a great interview with Kyle Turley. And one thing that really stuck out about that interview for me was Kyle telling us that all the hits he took to the head over the years was like taking your head and bashing it against a brick wall about 1,000 times a day. And that's where he is. And then you can hear stories of Kyle Turley talking about replacements. Jim Everett's talked about different surgeries. You know, we know Delvin Bro's story. Like, we can go through the list of guys, Willie Whitehead, like guys that have been on the show that are like, yeah, like we are younger, in shape individuals who have had surgeries that most people in their 70s don't have. Right? So how can the dudes in the suits, right? How can they make these decisions? Now, in the defense of some of those guys did play, or some of those guys have been a part of coaching staffs and seen some things. But again, I understand, and this is where the TV money thing we talked about earlier. I know I was talking about the NBA, but let's kind of twist that back around to this conversation. Is that's where it's so damaging, is because the TV rights have become so lucrative. There is so much money in the broadcasting and streaming rights. Well, then naturally, the business guys crunching the numbers, or the analytical guys crunching the numbers, go, well, by my calculations, if we play more games, we can charge more for a season, we can make more money.
Yep.
Wonderful. But how about we give a damn about human beings and how this affects their lives? And I don't even want to hear from you people that say, well, they know what they signed up for. Well, yes, they do. And yes, that's why you have guys retire so early, right? What's recent examples? The two recent examples that come to my mind of dudes that were just hard hitting individuals that were really, really good at their position. Patrick Willis with the 49ers retired too early, right? Luke Kuechly, who some people call one of the smartest defensive minds in NFL history, retired too early. Bob gave you guys that comment because he played for the Carolina Panthers. If he played just about anywhere outside of the NFC South, it might have been different. Making an assumption.
No. I think it's too much hyperbole about Luke Kuechly. I do agree he was an extremely intelligent player, extremely rugged player, very good linebacker. But I mean, to put him top tier like some people have tried to do among the all-time greats, no, I don't see it. But if he'd have stuck around a little bit longer, maybe.
Does he have enough years to get in the Hall?
Not in my opinion, but yeah, not in my opinion.
He'll probably get in.
Probably.
The Hall of Fame is not what it used to be, but
no, hell no. And Pat Swilling should be there. 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 And I'm going to say it a hell of a lot more next week too. But this 18-game bullshit. First of all, once Goodell got his way, and Goodell has made noises about this for years, but once Goodell got his way and got a 17th game added, I said right then, within 2 to 3 years, or 2 to 4 years, there would be an 18th game. And it's as simple as this. It's a money grab. That is honestly all it is. First of all, don't give me the player safety bullshit. The COVID year, when you were moving games to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then having those same guys turn around and play on Sunday. Any league that has a Thursday night game weekly and then has those guys turn around or has a Thursday night game after all these guys just played the previous Sunday. Don't preach to me about player safety. And I know that they're going to say, we'll add a second bye week. We'll reduce the preseason to 2 games. Well, you horses' asses. The majority of the players that play the 16, 17, 18 regular season games, the top tier players, the starters, they don't play regulars or they don't play preseason anyway. So don't give me that. It's all about a money grab A, money grab B, and C. And people are going to call me a Goodell hater for this, and that's fine because I do have a personal deep hatred for the mere existence of this clown. But Roger Goodell is so egotistical that he wants his regime to stand out above all others. Tagliabue, Roselle, and one of the ways to do that would be make sure all the possible records, career and season, are set during your regime. Well, it's pretty damn easy to do that when you relax all the offensive rules against the offense, when you make it nearly impossible for the defense to play defense, when you add a 17th and now 18 regular season game, you can manufacture your own dynasty, whether cheating or not, just by protecting certain players, certain teams, certain individuals, all of which Goodell has done during his regime. So yeah, it's a money grab first, it's a money grab second, and it's about ego for this clown third. It's as simple as that.
Ultimately, putting these things in place, tell me something that is the unfortunate reality of sports in America. I would not go as far to say sports in the world, but it's getting there. Mm-hmm. Is that money is more important than the athlete.
Always.
And it has been that way. There are some sports, there are some leagues, and these leagues are tiny, by the way. We're not talking about, when I say world sports, we're not talking about La Liga. We're not talking about the Premier League. Like, we're not talking that. We're talking about some of these tiny little leagues in the middle of nowhere that have 20 fans. Those places, yeah, it's still about the players. But everywhere else, the NBA, the NFL, all the MLB, all the major sports here, plus some of those top leagues in different countries for different sports, and then FIFA, don't even get me started. Yeah, it's all about the money, and it's sickening. And I think it's more sickening, Bob. Like, it's one thing as a fan to see some of this stuff happen. You're just like, okay. It's another thing when you have, when you've built relationships with guys that have played, whether it be at the top in the highest tier and guys that we've talked to. And like I said, guys that you and I can call and text and talk to them about their experiences, whether it be in the NFL or the top sports league and whatever their sport is. And then you go and you talk to people like you who played volleyball as a professional and some of the things you still deal with. You talk with, I have friends that play professional sports overseas, and maybe not the top league in the world, but maybe the top league in whatever the respected country is. And you talk to them and you talk about, some of the things they go through physically, even while they're still playing. And, Bob, I bring it up every week. Like, I'm in my 20s. Like, I'm in my late 20s, and I have friends that are like, yeah, man, like, I don't know how much longer my knees are going to. And you're thinking, well, that's terrible. Like, at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's a money grab first, it's a money grab second. And, you said ego for Goodell, but for most other places, it's a money grab. Like 1, 2, and 3. It's awful. I hate it.
Yep.
Let's see what other things we have in the comments. We'll get to this at some point, Anna. But Anna said, I've been screaming for Pat Swilling for years. Yeah. Well, Bob and I can say I was screaming for Sam Mills for years, and that took too dang long too.
Yeah.
And I've shared this on this show before too. Like, I wore 51 my very first year of playing football for Sam Mills, and I never watched the man play live in my life. It was old VHS tapes. Thanks, Dad, if you're watching. Appreciate you sharing NFL films with me at a very young age to show me the greatest linebacking corps of all time. Tommy over at YouTube says, "Who dat as always, but I have huge doubts about this season." And here's his list for these doubts. It's a list.
Oh, nice.
Derek Carr, offensive line. Cameron Jordan, linebacking unit in general. That's not one I hear a whole lot. And he said, of course, Dennis Allen. Yeah, I think Carr and the O-line kind of go hand in hand, right? The offensive line is one of the weaker points when you stack it against Saints' offensive lines of recent memory. This one's pretty bad. Cameron Jordan, we've talked about. I think this is going to be an interesting year because I think Cameron Jordan knows what Cameron Jordan is at this point, and the coaching staff knows what Cameron Jordan is at this point. So how do you utilize him to the best of his abilities, the best of the team's abilities, and put him in positions to be successful, because he's not the guy that needs to be playing 90-something% of the snaps anymore.
Right. And yeah, listen, it's not just Cameron Jordan. It's the entire Saints defensive line. They need to be more disruptive. They need to generate more pressure. So yeah, I get the concern, but I would expand the concern from Cameron Jordan specifically to the Saints defensive line in general. Because next to Granderson, who as you have pointed out many times, kind of hit a wall last year over that second half of the year, and wasn't nearly as consistent. But even outside of Granderson, this defensive line did very, very little of that, and outside of spurts from Brian Brissy, who we expect much bigger things from this year. So it's not just Cam Jordan, that needs to kind of find the fountain of youth, so to speak. But this entire Saints defensive line needs to be far more disruptive than the unit that we've seen, not only last year, but even the year before.
And then to close it out with the linebackers, I'm not really concerned about the linebackers. Like depth, I can agree with, right? One injury away from being like, "Ugh," but you have Demario Davis, who is still one of the best linebackers in the league. Signing of Willie Gay, who Bob, you were well ahead of that. So props to you there. And then Pete Warner, when he's healthy, is still, a solid contributing linebacker. And obviously he has his strengths and he has his weaknesses, but we're far along and far enough along in his NFL career to know what those strengths are, know what those weaknesses are.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the Willie Gay signing is a huge addition, because I think the things that Pete Warner doesn't do well, Willie Gay does do well. And so they're going to complement each other. But I understand from a depth perspective, and I have harped on this for about 2 years now. They're one linebacker injury away from being in serious trouble. And serious trouble is in unproven guys behind them. Right? You look at last year and not really a linebacker, because they finally started using him as not a linebacker, but like Zach Bond's not there. And say what you will about Zach Bond, but that was a guy who was in the system for a long time. And I do think there's value for that. App State Mountaineer in DeMarco Jackson, a guy that we both like, but hasn't done anything outside of really special teams.
Yeah.
Last year, and obviously missed his whole rookie season due to injury. I like DeMarco Jackson. I also like small school kids. I like small school kids from North Carolina. He checks a lot of boxes for the Brendan should absolutely love this prospect.
He does. Yeah, he does. And I love DeMarco Jackson coming out of App State. I compared his style of play, his tenacity, to Demario Davis coming into that year's draft. But listen, I actually feel more comfortable about this year's linebacker depth than I have for the last several years. Obviously, it's of utmost importance that Demario Davis continues to stay healthy and play at a high level. And you hit the nail right on the head with Pete Warner, and you know that I love the Willie Gay signing, that I was on board with that since January. Wrote an article about that, but I apologize. I don't recall who made the comment. Wrote an article about the linebacker competition, specifically for the number 2 linebacker between Warner and Gay earlier today. So check that out on my profile. But I mean, beyond those 3, yes, there's a drop off, but I really like the rookie Jalen Ford from Texas. I know he's only a 5th or a 6th round pick, so far from a guaranteed spot on the team, but I think he could make some noise. And then some veterans that they brought in. They brought in Monty Rice, who has played some quality football in his career, and they brought in Kalike Hudson, from over from Washington. Kalike, if he makes the team, he's a sub package guy. He's a linebacker that you'll put out there for coverage duties, and on obvious passing downs. Now, I say all that. Monty, right, and I've always liked Anthony Orji too, in addition to DeMarco Jackson. Not all these guys are going to make the team. So, in my opinion, there's going to be some decently talented linebackers that the Saints are going to have to part ways with. Are any of those guys, Jackson, Orji, Rice, Hudson, Jalen Ford, even, are any of those guys on par with, forget Demario Davis, are they even on par with Pete Warner or Willie Gay? No, they're not. But there are a lot of teams, in fact, most teams throughout the National Football League, that once you get beyond their number 2 or number 3 linebackers, there's a huge drop off. So the Saints are no strangers to this here. But I feel more confident that the number 4, the number 5 guy, whoever comes out of this competition for this team, I feel a little bit more confident if they were pressed into duty than in past years. I would even take any of the guys that I mentioned for linebacker play over Zach Bond. who, as you mentioned, was not a linebacker, never should have been used as such. So that, therein lies the main reason why I say I'm more comfortable with this unit in general from top to bottom than I have been in years past.
Speaking of positions, we could talk about some positional battles. You've had some articles that you've written. I want to steer a little bit away from that. Keep the door open, but steer away from that and ask you, yes, it's only the first day, but by the time we meet to do this show again, we will be 7 days in.
Mm-hmm.
So over this first week, what is the one thing you're keeping an eye out for when it comes to Saints training camp?
I want to see the offense. Obviously, health, that goes without saying. I want to see the offense, be crisp, be sharp, consistently, not just in spots. I want to see an instant comfort level from Derek Carr. I mean, yeah, he's going to throw some interceptions in camp. Don't forget, guys, this is a pretty damn good defense he's throwing against week after week. Or day after day in practice, and not just the number ones. The Saints have some good defensive depth too, especially their pass defense. We didn't even touch on the secondary tonight, and we're not. We have plenty of time to do so. Throughout camp with our different shows. But I still want to see Olave, Kamara, A.T. Perry, all those guys. Shaheed, Kendre Miller once he's back on the field, and obviously Derek Carr in the offensive line. I want to see them grasp this new system quick so that way they could digest more and more of the playbook. That's going to be the number one thing that I'm keeping an eye on. I would love to say offensive line in general, but as you and I both know, there's not going to be really any contact of consequence until they meet the San Francisco 49ers for that inter-squad scrimmage. And that's going to be 2.5, 3 weeks away. So it's going to be a while before we get a really good gauge on what the offensive line is going to look like. But yeah, as far as movement, motion, comfort level, this offense needs to be sharp right out of the gate.
I think for me, the number one thing that I'm watching kind of goes hand in hand with what you just said, and that is comfort level under a new offensive coordinator. Crispness, yes, but I think a lot of it starts with Derek Carr, and Carr's had some time since this coordinator had been named. He's had some time to work out with some guys. I need to see Derek Carr grasping it, right? Like the last thing you want to see is I can even live with the timing not quite being there with certain guys, but I don't want to see Derek throwing it one way and a receiver running another, right? Like I don't want to see some blatant, obvious error. I also don't want to see, like a clip that, like the Danny Dimes clip that's going around right now, where he overthrew a screen to his receiver by maybe like 40 yards. I don't want to see those things, right? I just want to see that it's starting to click, and I do think, and I've talked about it before, I think it's an underrated part of this year, in this offseason, is that it is going to be the second coordinator in 2 years for Derek Carr. On the flip, Bob was so kind to point out that it may be a blessing in disguise because Carr's having to learn a new system along with everybody around him, opposed to being a guy who was thrown into a system that everybody else already knew. So, it depends. Do you want to be a glass half empty or a glass half full type of guy? That kind of depends on, your point of view is going to steer my argument one way or another, but I definitely need to see it's clicking for Derek Carr. Like, yes, I would love if Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, Nate Peterman, I would love if all those guys were super sharp and were really understanding the system right out the gate. But obviously your starting quarterback is going to be the most important aspect to all of that. So that's what I'm looking for the first 7 days of camp. And with that, Bob, we're just about out of time. Now, you're going on vacation in a few days,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean you're not going to squeeze out a few articles, a few opinion pieces,
Maybe.
and just share, the wise wisdom that is Bob Rose, whether that be via X, via Facebook, via articles. So, with that, where can everybody follow you and your work and your thoughts and your opinions, as loud as they've ever been, about the New Orleans Saints?
Not sure what you're trying to say there, but I think there's a compliment somewhere in that mess, and I appreciate it. Yeah, as Brendan said, I will be on vacation with my family on the Atlantic shores, Ocean City, Maryland. So if any of you are up that way, give me a message, text me, email me, Twitter me, Facebook message me, whatever you need to do if you're in that area, and let's meet up. But even though I'll be on vacation, Brendan and I will still be bringing you a Bayou Blitz next week. I will also be on with Jordy Haltberg. I'll be cutting back my other media commitments, but Jordy is family, Brendan is family, you guys are family, which is why you'll get to see, I can't say a shirtless Bob from the beach. I'm not in the shape to do any Bayou Blitz OnlyFans page or swimsuit calendar.
Ooh.
I know. You know what? If I get enough requests in my inbox, maybe I'll consider it. I'll put that out there. But even though my media obligations for the next week are going to dwindle, I'll probably recirculate some of the players that I did training camp profile pieces on. So keep an eye out for that. And as always, you could check out my work on my Facebook page, Bob Rose. Twitter page at BobbyR2613. And we will definitely see you back here together for your Bayou Blitz next week. But in the meantime, if you haven't already, join up that Bayou Blitz Facebook page and Bayou Blitz Twitter group. I reversed that. Bayou Blitz Facebook group and Bayou Blitz Twitter page. I'm on vacation already. So check those out. Make sure you increase the membership numbers for those. And we thank you guys for everything that you have done for us. Can't wait to see you again.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. I promise for you guys watching live that the backdrop will return at some point. We'll actually get everything set up so Bob doesn't look like the guy who has his life together.
Because we all know Bob doesn't.
I was going to say, I mean, not that I have my life together either, but I have a blank wall. You have a nice little backdrop. I'm a little jealous, maybe a little envy of the setup as I'm still going through the whole moving process. But you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Quick shout out to our friend Thomas Manning, night one of the Reel to Reel Film Festival tonight. I will be out there joining them on Friday as I was a part of the selection committee. I think he said something crazy, Bob. I think he said over the next 48 hours or something, it was something crazy. Like over the next 48 hours, 93 different Q&A sessions he has to host. Or maybe total hours he has to host. It was something crazy like that, where essentially he had to it was double the amount of hours where he had all these Q&As that he had to host. So he's killing it. Definitely look out for some of those selections. I'll be posting some of my favorite selections on my Twitter page at BT Boylan. So quick shout out to him. That's what I'm going to be doing this week, hanging out at the film festival and having a good old time. So thanks to Thomas for allowing me to be a part of the selection committee. Shout out to him as well. Bob and I will have more Saints coverage throughout the week, obviously next week with another episode. And we're just so thankful for you guys because you guys make this enjoyable every week. It's an excuse for Bob and I to talk about random stuff and goof off and have fun. Bob, my friend, I hope you have an incredible time at the beach and enjoy your vacation. It's well-deserved. Say hello to Lauren and Will for me as well. But until next week, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, and jump into Bob's DMs for Bayou Blitz OnlyFans Year 2. Until next week, we'll see you guys then. Bye.